My name is Fatemeh Sadeghi, and my presentation is on women peddlers in Tehran Metro. The question that we try to answer is the roots and causes women approach this activity. After a brief introduction on women's economic activity, I will talk about the reasons they choose to work in Metro. I also will speak briefly about the challenges that they face. I have to mention that the data of this research was collected by Shima Tadrisi. My role is only limited to partially supervise this research. Interviews were conducted in August and September 2020. The interviewees were aged 18 to 49 years. The Farsi presentation of this research has been already made by Shima. Here, I present some of the findings in English. Let me talk about the background. Iranian women's informal economy is severely understudied. The real rate of women's informal economy is not known. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, this section was estimated to be more than 25%. However, the real rate seems to be much higher than this due to the invisibility of women's informal economy. Moreover, within 2 years of the corona pandemic, nearly 1 million women have been pushed out of the labor market. It is likely that many of them approach the informal economic activities. In 2013, the Statistics Center of Iran announced that the rate of women's economic participation is 12%. This was one of the lowest figures of women's economic participation in Iran after the revolution. In 2014, it was about 12.8%, which was among the lowest rates even compared to the rest of the countries in the region. But the declining trend of economic participation rate and women's employment ratio started in 2018 and has accelerated annually ever since. In 2018, the economic participation rate of women reached the highest level since the recent decade. But 1 year later, by the end of 2019, the rate of economic participation decreased by more than 3%. It is estimated that the unemployment rate has reached 10.9% in March 2019, which is lower than the previous year. In 2021, this rate dropped 2.3% and reached the lowest figure of 10.8%. It should be noted that in recent years, Iran Statistics Center announced that it had made changes to the unemployment rate. As a result, those who worked 1 hour a week, as well as unpaid workers in household and family jobs, are also considered to be employed. This definition of employment or economic participation has caused labor force indicators and unemployment statistics in official reports to be far beyond the existing reality. We can conclude that the unemployment rate has increased even after this process. This would mean that the real rate of women's unemployment is much lower than what it was officially announced. The decrease in women's economic participation rate in 2019 may be more than any other factor affected by the corona pandemic, which threatens and destroyed informal and temporary jobs more than other job groups. In April 2019, shortly after the official announcement of the corona pandemic, Sharq newspaper announced the unemployment of 600,000 people within a month, and that a large part of the unemployed were women. According to the officials of the Ministry of Cooperation, Labor and Social Welfare of Iran, the corona pandemic has destroyed more than 1,500,000 jobs. The ministry has claimed that more than 2/3 of the businesses that were affected by corona have been restored in 2021. Even though officials claim that a large portion of damaged jobs returned, the decline of women's economic participation continued. According to the government statistics, more than 100,000 women working or looking for jobs left the labor market. According to the latest report of the World Economic Forum, Iran's gender gap rank is 150 among 156 countries in the world. It ranks 16 among 19 countries in the Middle East and North Africa. One of the sub-indicators of the gender gap is the labor force participation rate, in which Iran ranks 152. Gender discrimination in employment is rooted in various factors such as discrimination in the law, which gives men a superior role. In addition to legal superiority, many people still believe that women primarily are wives and mothers. According to my estimations, which has been made based on the official surveys, more than 60% of Iranian men still believe that women should not work outside home. However, this does not mean that this is the case in reality. In my experiences, except for some very rich families, women have always worked and had income for their own, although not necessarily on the job market, but in their homes. The recession is also rooted in the structural adjustment policies that have removed more women from the labor market than men. Therefore, many women seek refuge in informal employment. Economic sanctions had deteriorated this condition. Therefore, more women were pushed out of the labor market. As a result of this severe condition, women are more likely to be forced out of the formal job market because men have priority in getting jobs. It also has to be noted that many women leave their jobs after marriage, and for various reasons. One reason is that many husbands are reluctant and disagree with their wives' work. The cliché that men are the breadwinner is still prevalent in a lot of families. Sexual harassment and vulnerability are other factors that need to be considered when we talk about women's labor force. Our findings show that many women, due to sexual harassment, forced to leave their jobs. In addition, findings show that husbands' suspicion make women leave their jobs as well. Let's talk about women peddlers in metro. Peddling in the subway is one of the significant economic activities of women in recent years. Since peddling in Iran is considered as informal occupation, it is not covered by legal supervision. The law does not define any rights for those working in this area. In other words, the peddlers working in metro are in a gray area. They are not visible from the point of view of politics, and their interests are easily overlooked. As a result, they experience more violence than their counterparts in the formal sector of economy. It is estimated that about 33% of female metro peddlers are the head of their families. Female peddlers face many obstacles, one of which is confrontation with authorities. In the rest of this presentation, the reasons of women's activity, the major challenges they face, and their tactics to overcome these challenges will be explained. How it started. According to our findings, some of women peddlers are motivated by friends and relatives to start peddling in metro. Others by seeing other peddlers. There are also those who migrate to Tehran because they were unemployed. Because they earn money, they encourage their relatives and friends to come to Tehran to work as well. What are the motivations to work on the subway? There are several motivations. Working on the subways for interviewees is not only the source of survival, but also income, economic independence, and many others. One of the reasons that our interviewees mention is survival. Sudabe, for instance, says that in the old days, every time they loot my possessions, I started from scratch because I had to keep working, because I couldn't survive otherwise. The experience of some peddlers shows that the seizure and confiscation of their possessions happened more often in the past. Another reason or motivation that has been mentioned by our interviewees is the need for low fund relative to other jobs. Depending on the type of goods that they need, once or twice a week, the peddlers go to the bazaar to purchase goods. Some peddlers borrow the initial fund from family and friends or provide them with their own savings. This is because they need less money than other businesses, but of course, some of them do not have the funds to pay for it. But in general, one of the reasons that they say that they start peddling in subway is that compared to other jobs, it needs not big fund to start the job. Another motivation is economic independence. For instance, Mahnaz says that by working in metro, she becomes independent and no one can bully her. Sheila, who is another interviewee, also believes that one's life should have some fruit and you cannot just eat or sleep. When you work as a woman outside, you know more about the conditions of the society and you can also socialize with people more. And according to Elahe, working on the subway took her out of her usual isolation and she became a socializing person ever since. Another motivation is economic problems. Economic problems have caused so many women, including Mahbubeh, to help her family by selling items in metro. Mahbubeh says that their beloved father is a worker and his income is not enough for survival. Her mother is also sick and unable to work. She said that economic problems have affected their lives and they are not able to supply even foodstuffs. In another case, Hamideh was forced to study because of economic issues and started working on the subway to earn money for her study. The fifth motivation that has been mentioned by our participants is the lack of university education and lack of jobs and skills. Peddlers claim that they work in subway because they have no other choice, because they do not have any other skill. They also do not have a university education. They claim that they cannot find a job because of their long hours of unpaid work. Others said that they work in private sectors, but their salary was low, and this led them to opt for subway work. For example, Hamideh said that she was employed at an airline agency, but her salary was 900,000 tomans per month, which was not enough for her to survive. There are also women like Mahnaz who quit their jobs and started metro peddling because she had no insurance. Another motivation is experience of sexual harassment in previous jobs. The fact that some peddlers have been sexually harassed in previous jobs makes it safer for them to work in women's wagons. Although this does not mean that they are not harassed on the subway anymore. Although they are harassed by authorities, passengers and their male companions, in women's wagons they are somewhat more secure. Because of that, they started peddling and they continue doing this. In women's wagons, they are surrounded by women, and because of that, they cannot be easily molested. Another motivation that is expressed is more independence in wearing. Shahla, for instance, says metro is not like government offices where you have to put on a manteau or chador. Here you can wear more freely. The next section and part of the presentation is the challenges and tactics that women have to face. There are numerous challenges, among which I chose only one because it is very significant, and this challenge is actually the challenge of confiscation and attacks by the authorities. One of the major challenges that women peddlers face in metro is the confiscation of their possession by authorities. I will speak about the tactics that they adopt to overcome this challenge. One of the ways that they have to choose in front of the authorities is escape. Sometimes the peddlers are forced to flee before being seen by the agents. Azadeh mentions that the running away is a solution. I run away, she says, from the hands of the officers as much as I can. I won't let them take my possessions. There are also basad gostaran or stall setters that are obviously under attack by the authorities. In addition to selling on the train, some women peddlers set up stalls on platforms of metro stations such as Imam Khomeini, Darwaze Shemrun, and Nawab stations. Since these three stations are located at the intersection of two lines, there are more passengers, which means they can sell more items compared to other stations. Peddlers in these stations are often attacked by the authorities. They also use the method of immediate packing of their items when agents approach. But they avoid sitting in places where the station cameras are on. Another tactic that women's peddlers choose is immediate removal of the stalls and packing. Authorities attack peddlers' stalls at different times of the day, especially during peak hours. Some of them set their stalls 8 times a day. Some sellers are informed by the travelers about the attack. Peddlers know from experience what is most dangerous, which is why they avoid selling their items during those times. After packing, some of them go to the restroom and wait for the officers to leave the station, which sometimes takes up to 2 hours. Of course, as the peddlers change their tactics, so do the authorities. They constantly change their methods. According to our observations, recently plainclothes agents have also been added to the metro agents. This makes the situation more challenging for the women peddlers. This is because, unlike metro agents, the plainclothes cannot be recognized by their uniform. To prevent the spread of peddlers, government officials had to guard the platforms from morning to evening. During this period, peddlers are either forced to sell on the train or change the situation.